At this time, I have the great honor of introducing this year's industry keynote speaker, Ms. Leanne Ridgway, Vice President and General Manager, Rockwell Collins Simulation and Training Solutions. Ms. Ridgway has been with Rockwell Collins since 1988, holding various positions of increasing responsibility. She was named to her current position of leading Rockwell Collins Simulation Training Business Unit in May 2011. Prior to taking on this role, she was the Vice President and Managing Director, Americas, where her responsibilities including leading business development for the company's service operations in North and South America. She was also responsible for operations, facilities, and business development of commercial and government products in that region. Ms. Ridgway has also served as Senior Director, Engineering Services, Rockwell Collins, where she led a global network of 400 field service engineers, providing complete lifecycle service and support for installations, operations, maintenance, upgrades, and repairs. Additionally, she led the company's integrated logistics support organization, which provides total cost of ownership engineering, obsolescence management, depot operations, provisioning, logistics, and information assurance management. Ms. Ridgway is a native of Anamosa, Iowa. She earned a bachelor's degree in business and economics from Mount Mercy College and a master of business administration degree from St. Ambrose University. Ms. Ridgway is active in her community where she serves on the board of directors for Starlighters Theater and the Eastern Iowa Red Cross. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Leanne Ridgway.
Thank you, Mike, for that kind introduction. It's a privilege to be here today and to have this opportunity to share some of my thoughts around the future of our industry. I'd especially like to thank Admiral Lewis and the National Training and Simulation Association for their invitation to be this year's industry keynote speaker. We appreciate all that you do at NTSA to support and promote our industry. The voice that you provide to the simulation, training, and support services industry is an invaluable asset to us, especially in these times of trying, dynamic fiscal environments. Again, we thank you for your service. So prepare the force and secure the future. When Mike Giannetti told me I'd have the opportunity to deliver this year's keynote, the guidance that he gave me for the speech was stick to the theme. Think about that and how that applies. Prepare the force and secure the future. I began working on my remarks for this speech, and with that advice in mind, I kept coming back to the theme and asking myself, what do I know about the future? Truth be told, I didn't know that 6 months ago that I'd be standing here addressing you all, talking about the future of simulation and training. So I began my preparations just like most of you would when you're undertaking a task of this magnitude. I began to see what others before me have done. I started the research step. So I picked up the phone and called my network of research analysts who were waiting, for the next task. And really that doesn't happen that way in real life. As you all know, we don't have those kind of assets. I did a Google search, looked to see what others before me have talked about in the references to what's going to happen in the future. So I decided to look back into the year 2000 and see what kind of predictions there were, because it was the turn of the new millennium. So with that, there had to be all kinds of great, accurate predictions for the future. I did find a number of predictions, and I won't share them all with you, but here's a small sample I'd like to share with you of some of the predictions of just a short 10 years ago, things that various people were predicting for the first decade of the century. And I have to give credit to Eric Zorn of the Chicago Tribune, who actually compiled this list, and of course to Google, who helped me put it together. One of the greatest leaps, I think, was that by this time, there were supposed to be quantum generators that were going to tap into the energy of space. They were supposed to be portable, available for all household units, and they were supposed to be able to enable an indefinite electrical supply. And with that, we were supposed to have now had the central power stations all closed and the grid system be dismantled. And at this time, 90% of all of our household consumer goods were supposed to be delivered directly to us. And a fourth grader on his way home from school was supposed to be able to reach up and push a button on his bicycle that would automatically start his microwave at home so his snack would be ready for him. I think when the predictors predicted that when they forgot or didn't think about the future ban on texting while driving laws that we have today. And finally, my favorite, wearable computers are going to free many people from their offices and also for commuting. How's that working out for all of us? I think we could say so much for people's track record at predicting the future. With that, I decided pretty quickly I wasn't going to try to come up here and predict the future of our industry. I don't want anybody quoting my wrong misdoings 10 years from now. But I did think, what if I try the opposite approach? If I look back over the last decade to see what transpired that didn't get predicted, I thought that would be an interesting look. It was a fun list to look at, and you have to admit you get a little nostalgic when you're looking back over time. But think about the things we didn't have in 2000, the things that we didn't know that we could exist without. What about our BlackBerries, our iPods, our iPads, any other kind of iDevice that we might own? What about our Facebook and Twitter accounts? And what about things like green jobs and green occupations? How could we have known that today that Apple would be one of the largest cell phone providers in the world, and that we'd be wondering if someone's going to give us an iPad 2 for this holiday season? As I continued to think about it more, though, I realized there's one item that stood above the rest that none of us could have predicted, and which arguably is one of the most far-reaching impacts to our lives over the past decade. Those were the events of September 11th, 2001. I would venture to say that the events of that single day had significant, lasting impacts on each and every one of us in this room. And for many of us, that event has shaped much of our professional lives over the last decade. For our military members in our audience, this has meant that we've been at war and have operated in forward deployed positions for the longest period in our nation's history, protecting not only our freedom, but also our way of life. We sincerely thank you for your service to our country. Please welcome me in joining him. Thank you. Over the service of that same time frame, those of us in industry have worked diligently to support those visions and those missions. We've all learned quickly to adapt to change. We've found ourselves faced with an increasing need to improve and be prepared for the unexpected and the improbable, both at home and abroad. As a nation, we found ourselves spending whatever it took to win wars, deploying thousands of troops and fighting an enemy with an ever-changing battlefield tactics. Now we find ourselves in a different position, facing a new set of challenges. Today, the number of troops deployed overseas is declining. We are largely out of Iraq, and our country faces a growing set of financial challenges which will impact all of us. It is this future environment, in the context of the challenges that our industry faces and how we continue to help prepare the forces and secure the future, that I'd like to talk about the remainder of my remarks. I see three key challenges that we face as an industry. First, as our forces have returned from combat tours, they bring to us crucial lessons learned in real-world conditions. We must harness this knowledge and apply their knowledge in our simulation and training environments. Second, the need for perpetual training is putting extreme pressure on our training infrastructure. We must find ways to continue to give our users the readiness edge as we send them back into theater. And finally, the third challenge I see and we need to address is the need to prepare for the future conflicts in the face of significant budget constraints. On the screen behind me and throughout my presentation, you'll see reminders of why we do what we do. The men and the women of our armed services who rely on us to make sure that they are prepared for their missions as they help secure the future. You'll also see synthetic environments created using today's technology. One can only imagine what technology advancements will create or employ in the future, and will continue to further blur that line between real and virtual reality. So turning to this first challenge, harnessing that knowledge of our forces returning, that's going to be used to help improve our combat simulation and training environments. The simulation and training industry has historically provided this foundation for training, provided the ability to allow users to train while mitigating the risk to our vital assets, both our platforms and the men and women of our armed forces. We know that technology doesn't win wars. We know that trained specialists do. While this understanding and belief is not new to us today, we find ourselves preparing in different ways for the ever-changing environment our forces need to operate in. Historical training doctrines are no longer sufficient. As the environment has become more complex, it's more diverse, and it's certainly less predictable. While simulation and training market had started originally by preparing aviators to operate their platforms for basic flight operations, it's matured its focus. It's on to mission readiness and preparing our specialists for successful execution of their missions. The simulation and training industry has progressed. It's past just an Air Force focus now. It now includes combat operations, medical emergencies, operations and autonomous and remotely operated systems, and virtual training in multiple scenarios with multiple players involved in the mix. Our users are bringing us these lessons from today's conflicts, where the tactics of our adversaries are more and more unknown and unpredictable. This environment forces the armed services and industry to establish training programs that are more flexible, mission-focused, and readily available. If anything, over these last 10 years, it's proven to us that what we think we know to be true certainly will not be true tomorrow. The tools with which we carry out our missions need to perform in this highly complex and diverse environment. And our forces need our help to develop heightened decision-making skills. History has shown us that the odds of a successful mission increase with effective training and to achieve these higher levels of readiness. However, actions of our forces based on canned scenario training environments is no longer good enough. The need for this institutional training still exists, of course, but it merely prepares our troops to operate the equipment in the field. Our forces increasingly perform their roles now in joint operations and with coalition forces in a much thicker fog of war environment. The ability to perform in this complex environment requires that increased fidelity and the behavioral aspects of our models. So the challenge of today's simulation and training market actually goes beyond harnessing the knowledge of the returning forces and merely applying it to our training programs. Along with that, we also need the processes and the systems that rapidly and continually update this knowledge base to achieve and to keep and to maintain our world-leading first-class preparedness for our forces. We owe this to them, and these capabilities are critical for maintaining their mission readiness. Turning to the second challenge I see for our industry, the need for continued training and providing that readiness edge, it is putting pressure on our training resources and our infrastructure today. So we need to be adapting our training paradigms to match the cognitive orientation of this new generation that's performing this mission. Over the last decade, we've seen an old lesson reinforced again, that there's just one thing that remains constant, and that constant is, of course, change. We live in a world today where everywhere you turn, there's an app for that. We cannot expect a generation who grew up with this constant connectivity of iPads, smartphones, and social media to adapt to or learn different cognitive skills for the battlefield. If we won't accept our training solutions to be out of sync with these systems or platforms that they're replicating, then why would we settle for providing negative training constructs to the primary users of our industry's training solutions? It's a challenge. Today's handheld mobile devices, they can be tailored to individual missions, and they can provide just-in-time training. They can be up to date with data and resources. Our forces are used to living their daily lives this way with the ability to be able to plug and play. We must bring these same capabilities to their training environments. The increase of these social networks and the usage of mobile phone devices provides us both challenges and advantages. Our challenge is to consider enabling these technologies and adapt their benefits to achieve the increased learning. The future demands research to address how training applications and mission command and these control systems can be fully utilized to provide immersive environment elements for learning. The immersive environment and experience or training edge needs to blur the differences between virtual and real scenarios. There are rapid technology advances in adjacent markets, such as the gaming and the entertainment industries. This has allowed the increased stimulation of our senses. We need to capitalize on these advances in these technologies and feeder industries to provide that training realism in the military simulation and training. We're all familiar with Moore's Law. In simulation and training, we've seen the days of yesterday where there were actual computer rooms shrink down to where the cabinets were the size of refrigerators, to now where we are today, where it's all personal computer-based, and where it's moving to very rapidly in the near future, down to portable handheld mobile devices. One can only imagine where the technology advances might lead us farther into the future. Our training infrastructures are also in needs to meet the demands of our ever-changing environment. Integrated live, virtual, constructive, blended training environments are needed, along with rapid and very aggressive adaptive connectivity, similar to what today's soldiers already know from the gaming industry. The key words in this challenge are being rapid and adaptive. For our users, we must also meet the challenge of providing this persistent global training securely with that Loctite information assurance. While a critical constant may be change, we find our forces cannot afford to wait for changes in their training environment as they prepare for their missions. This will alter the way our industry operates and invests in the future. This robust training experience needs to be delivered not only at the home station, but also deployed. We heard General Walker give very motivating and compelling reasons why this needs to happen. To train our troops, militaries worldwide want the most advanced technology available. At the same time, they want to lower their risk to performance, and they want to reduce their costs of operations and their ownership. Immersive simulation and integrated training is needed across all aspects of modern warfare, while providing access and collaboration for that much-needed decision-making and operational skill building. Last year at this conference, my company had the means for an Air Force JTAC to gain his training credits without his certification lapsing, which it otherwise would have. It wasn't a planned event. Rather, it was something that the JTAC training officer approached us with after being able to see the possible benefits of what we were bringing to the show floor in an integrated set of technologies. Our ability to provide this service is just one small example of how our industry can leverage advancements in telecommunications along with our simulation and training environments and standard to bring real-world benefits to our customers. Finally, I'd like to talk about the third key challenge I see facing our industry: preparing for our future conflicts in the face of the budget constraints. Some of you may be wondering why I would have saved this very timely topic for last, but as I have been hearing a lot of this talk in the media, certainly escalating over the past month, I was afraid that, quite frankly, I'd lose you on the first two topics if we started talking about the budgets up front, so I saved it to talk to you last. These events of September 11th resulted in our global war on terror and an attitude across our populace that we would do whatever it took to take the fight to our enemies to avoid the repeat of the events that fateful day. Our country spent what was needed to support our men and women in uniform and to win this fight. Today, our country finds itself faced with new challenges. Challenges to our long-term security, largely driven by the conditions of our finances. Businesses and militaries alike find themselves faced with this new challenge, the future of declining budgets. The potential magnitude of these budget reductions are certainly attention-grabbing, and none of us should think that it's going to be a business as usual with a little belt tightening and that's going to get us through. But I can tell you that some of us in industry, in other markets, have already experienced something similar in nature. At Rockwell Collins, our commercial aviation half of the business has gone through not one, but two significant downturns in our commercial business over this last decade. And I can tell you, it wasn't just a slight drop in business. In some cases in our business segment, it was over a 40% drop in business nearly overnight. Now, some may call that a character building experience. I can tell you for one that it was very challenging, but we did learn some very, very valuable lessons out of that. I think a couple of those lessons are applicable here in the industry and the conditions we face today. The first that I'd speak to you about is that as soon as business falls off or you have an impetus where things start to slow down, you very quickly see the inefficiencies in your processes. And to that, you have to respond very quickly. And you have to respond by redesigning and taking costs out of your processes and your organizational structure as quickly as you can. You need to match your business structure with the market realities. That will help sustain and keep the boat afloat while you're developing your new processes. Second, your focus on your customers and solving their problems becomes even more important. They're going through the same thing we are, and they're feeling the same pain of these constraints. They need the best we can deliver, even more so now in these tough times than when times are good. And success comes from focusing on those truly important needs, and as opposed to the desirables or the want-to-haves or the nice-to-haves. And when we challenge our teams to innovate against this new set of standards, bringing these new capabilities, they'll step up to the challenge in new, more cost-effective ways. In this budget environment we're facing, our customers still need us to be prepared, and we need to prepare the forces for the missions they will be called upon to perform. It likely will be in a smaller force, but with the same performance expectations, if not greater, that are needed today. Preparing the force is challenging enough, but it will become even more so with the added burden in this new economic reality that we're living in. The challenge to industry is to find ways to provide innovative, cost-effective solutions with increased training realism. The use of simulation provides us a viable and cost-effective means to meet this demand. The business challenge is finding the ways to operate within this reduced budget environment while still meeting our stakeholder and shareholder expectations. Together, as industry partners, we must find ways to collaborate in order to increase our collective chance of success in operating and supporting our customers' missions. Performance is the key to building our trusted relationships in the face of this world of mistrust. Our success as an industry hinges on the ability to find the ways to make our customers in uniform successful in this difficult environment. I believe we can do this through effective collaboration, focused investment strategies, and partnerships with our customers. As I begin to wrap this up, I hope my thoughts on the three key challenges we face as a simulation and training industry have laid some foundation for you to have future dialogue this week. Our ability to respond and to adapt the way we face these challenges will shape the future of this industry. So first of all, we must continue to capture those valuable lessons coming to us from theater. We need to harness that knowledge, and we need to incorporate it as quickly as we can into our simulation training and missions. We owe it to the men and women in uniform to use this knowledge to better prepare future warriors for their success. Second, as the need for continued training maintains readiness pressure on our training infrastructures, we must meet this challenge of that persistent global training in this environment. And all of this must be done facing that very important third challenge I spoke of, preparing for those conflicts in the future in the face of these tough budget constraints. I expect this third topic will continue to be a hot topic of debate among the floor this week at the exhibits. We must fight against, though, letting the uncertainty of this budget environment paralyze our progress on the other challenges we've spoke about. Clearly, over the next 12 months, we're going to see a number of twists and turns on this budget front. But at the same time, our customers are going to continue to face those significant challenges that they wake up to every day on vital missions that they've got occurring around the globe. We must find ways to continue to make them successful. So looking back at this year's theme for the conference, I'd challenge each of us to continue to find the ways that we individually and as a group can do everything it takes to secure the future by doing what we do best as an industry and helping our military users prepare the force. I'm confident that our industry will once again demonstrate its versatility and its adaptability that will help us define our future. Now, as I close, I'm going to go back to a little bit of a brief transition. I was looking at a way to tie my remarks back to something that's more current, bring us back to today after having the discussions all on the future. And as we know in simulation and training and in our industry, we are focused on preparing our forces for the missions they face. We do this because we know there's a very, very strong correlation between preparation and mission success. So, with this being late fall, this being the football season, and having many rivalry games going on, and I have an audience full of service members and retirees, I thought I would like to ask for your counsel and advice on any conclusions that I should draw from this next slide. As you can see, this slide shows the winners of the Commander-in-Chief's Trophy over the last 40 years or so. Any conclusions that you want to make on this slide? I understand that for our Army and Navy members, there's still one pretty important game left to play out there next weekend. Which team is prepared for success? Thank you again for the opportunity to address you this morning. I'm going to close, and I'm going to go out on a limb by making one prediction, even though all my research told me not to do that. And no, it isn't trying to predict the winner of the Army-Navy game. I thought I'd go with a safer bet, and I'd like to make the prediction that I am sure we will have an outstanding week and a great conference ahead of us. Thank you.
Great. I feel like the weight must have been lifted off. I feel so much taller now. Thank you very much, Ms. Ridgway, for coming out from Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and joining us. Actually, I guess you came down from Sterling. I'm not, yes. You gave us some great challenges to all of us in industry, and through your leadership and the leadership of many other people in this room, I'm sure we're going to be up to the challenge. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes the 2011 ITSEC opening ceremony. The General and Flag Officer panel will convene in this auditorium at 10:30. Thank you for attending.